Welcome to Helping Organisations Thrive. Today I have the pleasure of Aaron Hill. Good afternoon to you, Aaron.
Good afternoon, Julian. Good to be here. Thanks, mate.
Good. I had to think where I was. Well, I was morning or afternoon there. I don't know why, because anyway, there we go. It's one of those things.
Time difference.
Time difference. It's only an hour, but yeah, I am in the afternoon, and so are you. So you have over a decade of military experience. You've served in the Royal Marines and the UK Special Forces, and now work as an entrepreneur and resilience coach, helping clients forge the best version of themselves. And we're going to be exploring resilience in the context of acceptance before action. But before we get into that, Aaron, I'd like to ask you, what do you love about what you do?
Yeah, a great question. I think there's two main things that jump straight out at me. And the first one is the connection that coaching brings and the relationships that it develops. That's really, really special, especially after leaving the military and such a tight-knit unit. To get to connect with people on a deeper level, albeit in a different way, is really quite special. And the fact that so many times when I get to work with amazing people, they teach me things about myself. They can't help but, when they explore certain things, when they unpack certain things, when they unravel certain stories, it helps me to do exactly the same for me. So it's a continual growth and learning process. So it's probably the two things that jump out at me about what I love to do.
And have you got a recent example where you've learned from a client, either taking them through a process or through a challenge that helped you, I don't know, see something differently or reflect on something that helped enable you to learn something?
Yeah, I can't remember the exact lesson, but I remember the first time it happened, because it really it took me back at first. And I think, I was coaching a guy who lives in the States, incredibly busy, driven entrepreneur, a lot going on in his personal life, a lot going on at work, very, very head down and grind type of mode. And over the process of a couple of months of working with him, watching how reflective he became and how he was able to draw out so many insights and lessons when he disengaged or took a bit of a step back from the noise of work, but also from his own mind as well. And some of the reflections that he was offering back to me and the questions that he was asking himself really showed me that, maybe once upon a time I would have said I need to up level. But what it showed me is I really need to be present when I show up and coach people, rather than go through the motions. I was busy. It had been really easy I think that was the lesson that he probably showed me, that he's gained so much perspective and clarity, and I need to be really present to be able to support him. It was a great lesson, and he's a really good mate. So it's an interesting lesson.
Yeah, and I think it's important. I'm a coach as well, but whether you're a coach, leader, whatever you are, it's to have that perspective in life that or mindset, I should say, when you're going through life, actually to see opportunities to learn from other people, learn from situations, and just having that mindset really helps you obviously with resilience, but helps you become a better version of yourself. And I get fascinated with the conversation I have on here and all the people I meet, and I learn a ton, as well as all the clients and the interactions I have. And I think it's just going into it with that mindset, isn't thinking, I want to learn something here. What can I learn? What can I galvanize in something in me that will really help me move forward? So we're talking about resilience, and I want to ask you, from your experiences, whether that's recent or you're through to your military, what has that taught you between the relation between acceptance and resilience, and why acceptance is really important in the context of building resilience?
Yeah, so I think resilience for me is something, from a young age, I was always trying to prove my worth, prove my place in the world. I failed most of my exams at school, or didn't hit the grades that I needed to stay on to do sixth form. So from a very young age, way before that, by the way, I was looking, probably reflecting back now, how can I make my mark on the world? So I used to try and do difficult and challenging things, which led me through my military career and onwards, and succeeding to an extent doing that. So I was always trying to be sort of like a tough lad, a tough guy, even though I'm not. I'm just me, and I can be that if I need to be, but I don't have to. I don't have to live that like some of the preconceptions might be around military and certain backgrounds. But what I did realize is through learning about myself is that I was a very resilient individual. So the thing I liked about resilience is that, or what really spoke to me, is the ability to adapt and learn and not necessarily endure and crack on whatever the cost. It was the awareness to sometimes step back and rest, or step back and change tact. And it comes back to acceptance of, for me, who I am, where I am, what I want to do, and how I'm doing that. So yeah, I'm not sure if I've really spoken to the direct relationship there, but for me, the example I always go back to acceptance is like the example Stephen Covey gives in his book, 7 Habits, of we can be charging up the ladder, but if we're not aware of the wall that we're climbing or the ladder we're on, what's the point? We could be climbing to the top of nowhere. If we take a pause, take a look around, accept where we are, maybe we need to get back down, change ladder, be that in personal life or in business or in a relationship, then it can save us a lot of time, effort, and energy, I think.
So is it acceptance to you then that almost getting the reality of the situation a little bit more, or get understanding who you are, what you are, or is it? It's not like resigning to the fact that this is not going to change, or I'm giving up. It's not that type of thing, is it?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. And for me, it's a lot more on a personal level. Acceptance of who I am, what I want to stand for, learning about myself. So again, if I take it back to my example, I was always trying to prove something, and because it was never what I needed, I would have never got enough of continually pushing and doing difficult or challenging things until I learned to accept who I was, which is me, and my own unique talents, my own unique look on life, etc. So until I can hold that place for myself and treat myself kindly, or learn to accept my mistakes as well as my strengths, then I'll be charging up the wrong ladder for as long as it takes until I get knocked off.
So it feels to me, is this like almost get to that place where you start to have more self-care and awareness of our needs, and the fact that sometimes we need to take a break, sometimes we need to be a little bit less hard on ourselves, because I know as our individuals, we tend to be harder on ourselves than other people. And I often use this question with clients, and I say, what would you say to a friend about a certain situation? And most people are generally quite kind and say, oh, just take a break. I'll take that. I'll do that for you. We need to be a bit more like that. Is that what we're talking about here? Is that self-care sort of type of approach to building that ability to be more resilient?
Yeah. Yeah, self-compassion, I think. And I'd be interested, because I know when we first spoke, I gave an example of what acceptance was. And so if you can remember what I alluded to in that story, then please bring that back up, Julian, as an example, because it's not coming straight back to me now. But yeah, I think for me and so many people, there's so many beliefs that we've just accepted or absorbed from such a young age that we don't get to challenge or question them now as an adult and check whether they're serving us or not. So for me, it's an acceptance of, well, actually, I am okay doing what I am, okay doing what I'm doing. I don't need to make this amount of money or live here or show that I've got this type of lifestyle or be in this unit for me to feel good about myself. So, and it also does come back, like yourself, self-care as well, looking after myself. It's probably something we'll talk about a bit more in depth in terms of resilience and my beliefs around it. But yeah, definitely the capacity to be kind to myself, and it was learning where those voices, where that inner critic was coming from. Was it actually mine, and was it actually true? And that's something that I help my clients do, is unwrap those limiting beliefs or those voices, check if they're serving or not.
And what do you think holds people back from accepting the situation or going on that journey of self-care, what do you think stops us sort of getting to that place?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think sometimes the awareness, sometimes or not being willing or unsure of how to deal with certain things. It's like walking into a dark room and assuming that there's monsters in every corner because it's really dark. Yeah, it still brings up certain things when we walk into that room, but it's shining a light and seeing actually it's a shadow, and it still provokes something. It's still uncomfortable. And I guess as men, especially as men, talking about emotions and what is uncomfortable and fear or regret or shame, the big good heavy emotions, it doesn't come very natural, and it's a lot easier to bury ourselves in work or in physical activity or training, or any other habit that might not be as beneficial in terms of alcohol, drugs, eating, pornography, whatever it is. That, again, just around, usually because there's a lack of awareness around it or understanding.
Interesting to just get an insight into obviously your military background, and obviously there's a preconceived idea of the type of people you are, from what we see on TV, films, and everything else, and being hard men and everything else, and all very slick and just, I don't know, keep yourself to yourself and that type of sort of approach. And that to me doesn't seem to create a view that you've just talked about. I was wondering, is that in the military, or have you just learned that since then, or is a bit of both going on?
I think, if I'm honest, there'll probably be a bit of both. Bearing in mind the military has got to do a very specific job, and that potentially there isn't time for all of that all the time. And given that a lot of lads and even girls come from lots of different backgrounds, lots of different ideas, and again, generally in society, it's not that sort of compassion isn't always talked about or explored or lived into. So it doesn't always happen. But I would definitely say, for me personally, it's something that I've learned since leaving, and maybe only a short time as 5 years ago, to be honest, when I started to really learn about myself. But there's no doubt there's individuals that are highly emotionally intelligent and aware and expressive, but there's also lots of guys and girls that aren't as well. And I think it takes all sorts to make the system to make the system work. Not necessarily completely beneficial if everybody was self-reflecting all the time. Maybe that's a bit beyond the scope of this conversation, but yeah, something that I've learned more recently, but that I feel a lot more grounded and at peace with, having lent into that sort of discomfort, having explored those shadows for myself.
Because you think of resilience in that sort of context, people can think it's all about grits and determination, and I think there's elements of that sometimes. I think sometimes you just got to sometimes get up and keep moving. So I think sometimes in life it is a bit like that, but it's more than that, isn't it? And so what's your perspective now on resilience, having where you are now today?
Yeah, I think I would say it can be that, but not at the detriment to ourselves or the things that we love or hold dear. I much think of it now much more along the ability, the capacity to adapt, to learn, and recover from setbacks, but also to have that awareness or acceptance of what is going on, and take the right action, or not that there's a right or wrong, but the action that is right for us. There you go. So rather than say yes to the next project, despite the fact we're already feeling burnt out, and skipped several activities that our kids are doing at the weekend to knock this project out, is that really serving us and who we are, or is it just playing into some old story to keep our boss happy, because we feel valued when our work is, or when we get that feedback loop from work? That's what I see it as. It's adapting and learning, especially from setback and challenge. Not necessarily, like I said, just enduring or bracing it out or grinding out a challenging situation. It's the ability to process and learn what's going on for us, and then take a grounded decision rather than just gritting our teeth all the time.
Yeah, and I think sometimes that almost the toxic type of resilience, where they're sort of pushing through and keep going, and which ultimately results in burnout. Effectively, it's what tends to happen in the organisations
Yeah,
and leaders.
I think for me, it was once upon a time physical. I think it was easy just to carry on going despite the numb pain, and you could look at that all the way through the military career, and also in long distance triathlon as well. There is an element of that. But yeah, for me, the new side has been emotional resilience, really learning how to process my emotions after a setback. What is really going on for me? What's the decision that I would like to take, or the path that I would like to follow that's true to me?
So what have you found in terms of whether you're doing a long distance triathlon or military or your business? What are sort of daily sort of habits that have helped you create that sort of, I suppose, a framework of resilience in your life? Have you done things differently and worked things through, having reflected and worked things through, that would help leaders who are listening right now, who want to perform, want to create high performance in their teams and themselves, but they want to do it in a way that's, I suppose, more holistic and balanced in that sense?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that jumps out at me is asking for help and support to do that, because we can't see what we can't see. We don't know what we don't know, and sometimes it takes an outside perspective to just open that the angle of the perspective of what's really going on there. So that would probably be the first one, is to ask for help. And it's about learning for me, and again, my clients, what really works for us. So calming the mind, mindfulness, meditation might work for somebody, but for somebody else, it's not going to work. So what might we learn, or what might we apply in terms of looking for grounded quality time where we're at peace? It'll look very different for very different people. So it's about learning about our own needs, really, and really building a simple, not necessarily quick, but actionable blueprint that's unique to us, rather than taking a generalized template from the wider world, or just because it works for Dave doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for him or for her or for me. So yeah, and it sometimes takes other people to help us unravel our own needs, and learn about ourselves. But for me, I think some of the biggest things that I try and do is, I talk a lot about my basics. It comes from the military, doing the basics really, really well. So what I put in my mouth, what I eat and drink, the amount of rest that I get, movement. Sometimes that's gym and exercise. Sometimes that is walking. Sometimes that is just being out in nature. What I do for stress management, my connections and relationships to myself, but also to the people close to me as a minimum. And then all the other good stuff like journaling, cold water, whatever it might be. But yeah, a real basic framework, just as a starting point.
Yeah, and I think it's important to find your own sort of way of doing it for you, because I think that's important, isn't it? As I say, certain practices, I do a lot of ice water, sort of bath type thing. Other people won't find that very helpful, probably find it incredibly stressful. And then some people do a lot more exercise than others, and it's that tough. It's finding your thing, but I think it's having some key things, some basics, which you just said there. Your nutrition, your rest, and movement, exercise, which, to be honest, are quite fundamental. I remember talking to my kids once, and I think it was my daughter wasn't feeling great, and I said to you, have you drank enough water? Have you eaten? Have you slept? And she went, yeah. Well, okay. Once you've covered those bases, then let's think about what it might be. Because I think sometimes when we're feeling a bit low and a bit flat, it could just we're not eating enough, basically.
Yeah.
Simple as that, or not drank enough water. Or I think we forget those basics, and it sounds, and it's nice. Obviously, military is all about the basics, isn't it? It's quite key, that sort of principle. But I think we need to bring that a bit more into our lives now, in our day-to-day lives.
Yeah, I had somebody on my podcast the other day, Rich Hunnocks, an ex rugby league trainer, really high standard guy. He's talking about world-class basics as well, along the same sort of lines around that. Each athlete would build it in their own practices and habits. But I think one thing that I'd mention there is that we're not necessarily, it's sometimes good to sit with the things that we need to, and not be using these sorts of routines, be it the ice bath or journaling or training, as a way of covering up or avoiding what we need to look at, or what we get to look at, because we don't need to. All of this is a privilege and quite subjective, really. But are we avoiding the thing that we get to look at and learn about ourselves, or are we sort of masking it with other things?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think it's that real intuitive being in tune with yourself, isn't it? Knowing your own emotions. I know when I use the ice bath, what I found really helpful for it, when I get in it, now it could have been 7 degrees yesterday and 7 degrees today, so there's no difference in the temperature. But today I might have felt a little bit more, not stress, but a sense of, I don't feel so strong today. I need to think about that. Why is that? Am I not slept well? Whatever. And I start sort of questioning it in a healthy way, and it makes me prepare for the day. So actually, it's a very good, almost a litmus test for me, weirdly. When I'm in that sort of 2 or 3 minutes in that water on my own, I just sort of get that moment and think that stress on my body is making me think about what's the state of my internals, I guess, in my mind.
Exactly. Yeah. And like just you've alluded to that there. Your nervous system knows better than you. And for me, I don't do cold water immersion really. But I did a while ago convert a chest freezer into an ice bath. It's a bit of a health hazard, but a protocol that I learned, that I can't remember where I've got it from. So if I do remember, I'll let you know. But it was 10 breaths. So it doesn't matter the time. There's no end goal there. It's 10 breaths. And just like you've alluded to, if there's things on our minds, then those 10 breaths, they'll go very quickly. As in we're fighting to control it because our nervous system is already agitated. But when we're a bit more grounded and at peace, those 10 breaths can last really quite a long time. And like you said, to come from that place of curiosity rather than judgment. I wonder what's going on for me. I wonder what I might need. That gentle reflection. I think so many of us are used to the harsh inner critic or the noise of a nagging parent or teacher. It's really interesting to come from a slightly more curious place, a compassionate place, for me anyway.
Yeah, no, I think that's healthy, and that just taking a moment to reflect sometimes, or go for a walk in nature, just to create that space, isn't it? To sort of take away the noise of life, just to sort of go, what's going on? What do I need to think about? I think it's that sort of perspective, isn't it?
Yeah, and I guess transitions as well then. So one of the other things I didn't mention is like stress management. What do I do to manage that frustration, or to learn about it, or to process it? And that'll look, just like you said, different things for different people. Could be meditation, could be a walk. But if I'm feeling a certain way, I know I'm a better dad when I get out the house, walk around the block and come back in. Or just spend a few minutes quietly breathing to a certain rhythm, or writing out a few lines of how I'm feeling, so that I can, the transition there between one thing and another, rather than carry that gently. I'm not going to use bad language here, but to carry that stuff in from work to the house, leaving it on the door.
So what has got you to that place of awareness of yourself, that you know you need to go for a walk, you know you need to do some breaths just to sort of calm yourself, that you're aware that sort of stress or whatever it may be causing internally? What's got you to that place?
A lot of questions, a lot of tears, learning about myself, getting asked really challenging questions, and peeling back those layers and recognizing actually there's sometimes I need to put myself first. It's a continual process. I don't see it as an end goal or a certain destination with this. It's another insight I've had again recently and had to relearn. This is a journey. There's no end point. So probably asking for help to learn about myself, because I recognize that when I show up in a certain mindset or in a certain level of peace or being grounded, then I know that has a knock-on effect on the people that I love, and the people that I care for, whether that's my friends, family, or even my clients, or even other parents at the school because I've got the time and space to hold a conversation with them, and I know that has an impact. So probably reflecting, I think, learning to quieten the noise and step out of my head and into my body, feel a bit more. Yeah.
And just probing a little bit more, what helps quiet your mind? What do you do to quiet your mind?
That's a really good question. I'm quite structured and I like routine. So it would be to start my day slightly earlier than my household so that I've got actual physical quiet in my life, and before the kids get up and start checking the stockings and looking under the Christmas tree. So yeah, I like to meditate. I've learned to hold my focus on one thing brings a lot of peace to me, and stepping outside of my mind and into my body. And I can remember tapping into this before I was really aware of what mindfulness was, during triathlon training. And it was just holding my focus on one thing. So whether that was in the water and just the feel of the water through my fingers every stroke, or on the bike, the rhythm of my breathing, or on the run, the rhythm of my feet hitting the ground. So yeah, probably focusing my mind on one thing, regardless of what it is the biggest thing for me. But I do have quite a structured routine that I run through most mornings.
Interesting. And so is breathing part of that as well, in terms of how you get to place?
It's not actually, no. Okay. It's something that I flirt with rather than breath work, rather than strictly practice, to be honest, Julian.
So just thinking, a leader's listening right now and wants to get into a better place in the new year, and thinking, I want to sort of understand a bit more about myself, I want to be more resilient. What sort of advice would you give them? And I know there's probably lots of stuff you can do. Just what one sort of key thing that would be really helpful for them to take away from today, from this conversation?
Yeah, great question. I think it would be to go back to the basics. What do you need to do for you to look after yourself, and how might that affect the people close to you if you were to show up slightly more rested or slightly more grounded? That's probably what I do, and look at the one thing that you can try for a week to see what results that brings you, rather than set off on a crazy morning routine from the internet that may or may not work. To learn your own way over time, and treat it as a journey.
And have you had feedback from your people around you of how you show up in terms of that? Do you invite that type of feedback from people?
Do you know what? I haven't really, but I sense it in interactions with people at the school. I think is the biggest one. But also, so when I first started applying these sorts of things to my own life at that time, it's pre-COVID, and I live in Barcelona, and I was working as a personal trainer and a strength coach in a local gym. I was so far out of my comfort zone, and starting a new career at 40 years of age in my second and third language. I hated it at first. And it was during this, when I was working at the gym, that I got an incredible offer by a friend of mine, Johnny Bevan, for him to practice his coaching skills on me, which I did. And so in the same environment, with the same people, and really going from a place of feeling like an imposter and not belonging and hating it, over a couple of weeks, if not months, I completely reversed that and felt that it wasn't that I didn't fit in. I felt like I owned the gym, and I still have connections with people, even though I no longer work there, and haven't done for several years in town. I stay in touch with several people. If I see them, they still come over and say hi or give hugs. And so there's evidence there, but I welcome the feedback from the people I know, if it's had an impact. I know my wife has mentioned it, but not directly to me. She's a cold Catalan girl, so they're not always quite as forthcoming with that sort of touchy-feely stuff. But I sense it in my interactions as well, Julian. So I'm not dependent on other people's opinions around it.
Yeah, no, my wife is happy to tell me things, definitely. Yes. Very good for my. Sometimes if I'm hungry is the one for me, and I just sort of start losing shit. Oh, you need some food, do you? Talking to me like I'm a child, but I sometimes need to be talked like a child. I tell you, because sometimes you get so lost in it and you forget, and yeah, that's it, and off you go with your emotions and stress, and you just follow the train, and it's not very helpful.
The
But yeah,
story,
really sort of,
yeah.
yeah. Well, thank you for coming on, Aaron. I really appreciate that. Thank you for your insights. Thank you for your openness as well. I appreciate that. If people want to get in touch with you, get to know you, what's the best way of doing that?
Yeah, I guess probably the best way is through LinkedIn here. So that it's Aaron Hill, Sinji Coaching Solutions at LinkedIn. I've got a little podcast as well, Forging Resilience. So you can also reach out to me through that with the messaging services there. So yeah, that's the two probably best ways.
Excellent. Well, thank you for your time.